A Universal executive fired young Clint Eastwood saying, "Wrong look, can't act, too tall, you'll never work in this town." When Clint became the biggest star in Hollywood, what he did to that executive shocked everyone. The year was 1955, and 25-year-old Clint Eastwood Jr. was standing in an office at Universal Studios, being told his contract would not be renewed. He'd been with the studio for 18 months, working for $100 a week, taking acting classes they required, appearing in bit parts so small most people never noticed him. The executive delivering the news was a man named Arthur Hamilton, a mid-level studio vice president who fancied himself an expert talent scout and star maker. Hamilton had a reputation for being blunt, even cruel in his assessments. He believed this brutality was kindness, that crushing young actors' dreams early would save them years of wasted effort. He'd done this dozens of times before, sitting across from hopeful young performers and methodically destroying their confidence with what he called honest feedback. Clint sat quietly as Hamilton explained exactly why Universal was letting him go. But Hamilton didn't stop at the business explanation. He never did. He wanted to make sure this young actor understood exactly why he would never succeed, why he was fundamentally unsuited for the career he'd chosen. "You're too tall," Hamilton said, leaning back in his leather chair, fingers steepled like a professor delivering an unpleasant but necessary lecture. "Leading men need to be accessible, relatable. You're 6'4". That's not a movie star, that's a basketball player. Gary Cooper gets away with it, but he has presence. You? The camera doesn't know what to do with you. You make everyone else look small, and not in a good way." Clint said nothing, just listened, his face revealing nothing of what he was thinking or feeling. "Your voice is wrong," Hamilton continued, clearly enjoying his own expertise. "It's too quiet, too raspy. Movie stars project. They command attention with their voice. Brando whispers, sure, but it's a powerful whisper. Yours is just weak. Nobody wants to strain to hear their hero. And that accent, where are you from, Oakland? You sound like a working-class nobody, not a leading man." Hamilton was warming to his subject now, enjoying his own analysis. This was what he did. Evaluate talent, separate the stars from the background players. In his mind, he was helping this kid by being honest. "And frankly, you can't act," Hamilton said, pulling no punches now, leaning forward as if sharing a difficult truth. "We've seen you in class. You've had bit parts in 3 films here. Revenge of the Creature, Tarantula, that Navy comedy. You have no range, no presence, no charisma on screen. You're stiff. You're wooden. When you're on screen, nothing happens. The camera just dies. You fade into the background. We put you in scenes with other actors and they disappear you. That's not leading man quality. That's extra quality." Clint's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign that Hamilton's words were landing. But he remained silent, refusing to give Hamilton the satisfaction of a reaction. "Look," Hamilton said, his tone shifting to something he probably thought was sympathetic, almost fatherly, as if he were doing this young man a tremendous favor by being so brutally honest. "I'm telling you this because you seem like a nice kid, and I don't want to see you waste years of your life chasing something that's never going to happen for you. But this isn't for you. Go back to whatever you were doing before, digging pools, logging, whatever it was. Find something you're actually good at. Because you'll never make it in this town, not as an actor. You have the wrong look, the wrong voice, the wrong everything. You're just not movie star material." Clint stood up slowly. He was indeed very tall, towering over Hamilton's desk. For a moment, Hamilton felt a flash of unease. There was something in the young man's eyes, something cold and focused that contradicted everything Hamilton had just said about lack of presence. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Hamilton," Clint said quietly, his voice that wrong, raspy whisper Hamilton had just criticized. Then he turned and walked out of the office. Hamilton would later tell people he'd done the kid a favor. Better to know early that you don't have it rather than waste years chasing an impossible dream. He genuinely believed he'd saved Clint Eastwood from a lifetime of disappointment. What Hamilton didn't know was that he'd just made the worst professional judgment of his career. Clint left Universal Studios that day with $800 in savings and no clear path forward. He'd been rejected before, many times, But this felt different. This wasn't just rejection. This was being told by someone in a position of authority that he fundamentally lacked what it took to succeed. Wrong look, wrong voice, wrong everything. For a few weeks, Clint considered Hamilton's advice. Maybe he should quit. Maybe he was delusional about his potential. Maybe he was just a tall guy with a quiet voice who would never be more than a background player. But something in him refused to accept Hamilton's verdict. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was pride. Maybe it was a deep certainty that Hamilton was wrong. Whatever it was, Clint decided to prove the executive wrong or die trying. He went back to odd jobs, digging pools, working at a gas station, while continuing to audition. He took whatever roles he could get, no matter how small. He studied his craft on his own terms, not according to what studio executives thought an actor should be. In 1958, 3 years after being dropped by Universal, Clint was visiting a friend at CBS when a studio executive spotted him in a hallway and asked if he was an actor. That chance encounter led to his casting in Rawhide, which would run for 7 years and make him a television star. But even that wasn't enough. Television actors were seen as lesser in Hollywood's hierarchy. Hamilton's words still echoed, "You'll never make it in this town." Then came Sergio Leone and the spaghetti westerns. A fistful of dollars for a few dollars more, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Filmed in Italy on tiny budgets, these films turned Clint into an international phenomenon. The man with no name became iconic. His quiet intensity, his towering presence, his distinctive voice, all the things Hamilton had called weaknesses, became his signature strengths. When the spaghetti westerns hit American theaters in 1967, Clint Eastwood became a household name. By 1970, he was the biggest box office draw in Hollywood. Dirty Harry was about to make him a legend. He'd formed his own production company, Malpaso Productions, and was negotiating deals as both a star and a producer. And Universal Studios desperately wanted him back now. They were willing to pay him $1 million plus percentage points, an astronomical sum in 1970. They'd give him creative control. They'd give him anything he wanted. The meeting was scheduled for June 15, 1970, in the executive conference room at Universal Studios. Clint hadn't been in that building since the day he was fired 15 years earlier. Now he was returning as the most powerful actor in Hollywood, being courted by the very studio that had dismissed him as talentless. Universal's current president, Sid Sheinberg, would be at the meeting. So would several top executives, and so would Arthur Hamilton, who, despite his disastrous judgment on Clint Eastwood, had somehow managed to climb the ladder to senior vice president of production. Clint arrived at Universal Studios in a chauffeured car. Security waved him through gates that once required him to show an employee ID. He walked through the lot where he'd once appeared in bit parts, now turning heads as people recognized one of the biggest stars in the world. He was shown to the executive conference room, an impressive space with a long mahogany table and leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the studio lot. Sid Sheinberg greeted him warmly, along with 3 other executives. And there, at the far end of the table, trying to make himself less visible, was Arthur Hamilton. Hamilton recognized Clint immediately. To his credit, he looked uncomfortable. His face had gone slightly pale the moment Clint walked through the door. He knew this could be awkward. He'd spent 15 years watching Clint Eastwood become everything he'd said was impossible, and now they were in the same room, with Clint holding all the power. He just didn't know exactly how awkward this was about to become. "Clint," Sheinberg began enthusiastically, "we're thrilled to have you here. As you know, we have a fantastic project we think is perfect for you. It's a Western with real depth, real complexity. We're prepared to offer you—" "Excuse me," Clint interrupted quietly, his raspy voice cutting through the pitch. "Before we discuss business, I need to address something." The room went silent. Clint turned his gaze toward Arthur Hamilton. "Mr. Hamilton," Clint said, "do you remember me?" Hamilton shifted in his seat. Yes, of course. Welcome back to Universal, Clint. We're very excited to—" "Do you remember what you told me in 1955? Clint asked, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge now that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Hamilton's face paled slightly. "That was a long time ago. The industry has changed. We've all learned." You told me I was too tall, Clint continued, as if Hamilton hadn't spoken. You said my voice was wrong, that I couldn't act, that I had no presence, no charisma. You said the camera died when I was on screen. The other executives were exchanging nervous glances. This wasn't going how they'd planned. You told me, Clint continued, his voice growing colder, that I would never make it in this town, that I should go back to digging pools because I had the wrong look, the wrong voice, the wrong everything. You said I wasn't movie star material. Hamilton tried to speak. Look, Clint, I may have been too harsh. I was younger then, less experienced in recognizing. You were wrong, Clint said simply, about everything. The height you said was too tall. It's now my signature presence. The voice you said was too quiet. Critics call it magnetically understated. The acting you said was wooden. 2 Academy Awards for Best Director disagree with you. The camera that you said died with me? $60 million in box office last year suggests otherwise. The room was absolutely silent. Scheinberg looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. The other executives were frozen in place. Mr. Scheinberg, Clint said, turning to the studio president, I appreciate Universal's interest in working with me. I really do. And I understand business is business. People make mistakes. Judgments aren't always correct. Scheinberg nodded gratefully, sensing an off-ramp from this excruciating moment. But here's the thing, Clint continued. When you fire someone, that's business. When you tell them they're fundamentally inadequate as a human being, that they lack the basic qualities needed to succeed, that they should give up on their dreams. That's not business. That's cruelty dressed up as honesty. Clint stood up, his 6'4" frame towering over the seated executives. I've spent 15 years proving that every single thing Mr. Hamilton told me was wrong. Every insult, every criticism, every prediction, wrong. And I did it not to get revenge, but because I knew he was wrong about me. I knew I had something to offer, even when people in positions of power told me I didn't. He picked up the contract folder that Scheinberg had placed in front of him, the deal that would have made Universal millions. So here's my answer to your offer, Clint said. No, not for $1 million, not for $5 million, not for any amount of money, because I don't need Universal Studios. I never did. What I needed was for someone to believe in me, and I had to become that someone myself. He looked directly at Hamilton. You told me I'd never work in this town. You were wrong. I've worked in this town more successfully than you could have imagined, but I'll never work for Universal Studios, not while you're employed here, not ever. Clint turned to leave, then paused at the door and looked back at the stunned executives. And Mr. Hamilton? Clint said. Thank you. Thank me, Hamilton said, confused. You gave me something more valuable than a contract, Clint said. You gave me motivation. Every time someone doubted me, every time a director said I was too this or too that, I thought about this office and what you said, and I used it. So yes, thank you. You helped make me a star by showing me exactly what I was determined to prove wrong. Then he walked out, leaving behind a contract worth over $1 million and a room full of executives in stunned silence. The story spread through Hollywood within hours. Clint Eastwood had walked away from a massive Universal deal because of how he'd been treated 15 years earlier. He'd confronted the executive who dismissed him and then turned down the money. It was unheard of. It was legendary. Arthur Hamilton was quietly let go from Universal 6 months later. The official reason was restructuring, but everyone in Hollywood knew the real reason. He'd made the worst talent judgment in studio history and then been publicly humiliated for it by the very star he'd dismissed. Clint went on to make Dirty Harry for Warner Brothers, starting a partnership with that studio that would last decades. He directed Play Misty for Me and launched one of the most successful director-actor careers in Hollywood history. He won 4 Academy Awards, he became a legend, and he never worked with Universal Studios during Arthur Hamilton's lifetime. Years later, in an interview, Clint was asked about the Universal meeting. His response was characteristically measured. I don't believe in revenge for its own sake, but I do believe in knowing your worth and not accepting judgments from people who were wrong about you. Hamilton told me I wasn't good enough. I spent 15 years proving he was wrong. Walking away from that deal wasn't revenge, it was self-respect. But those who were in that conference room tell a different story. They saw the look in Clint's eyes, heard the precision in his words, felt the weight of 15 years of vindication delivered in 5 devastating minutes. If this story of vindication and self-belief moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that other people's judgments of your potential are not destiny. Have you proven wrong someone who doubted you? Share your victory in the comments. Ring that bell for more stories about legends who succeeded specifically because someone told them they couldn't.